Today is Monday, October 17th, 2022, and tonight at 9 p.m. on public broadcasting system throughout the nation and also via streaming platforms, a film is making its debut. The film's title is called Rising Against Asian Hate, One Day in March. And that one day in March, the film's title refers to, is March 16th, 2021, where 8 people were shot and killed across metro Atlanta, across several jurisdictions, in what was and remains one of the worst mass shootings in Atlanta history. Robert Aaron Long has pled guilty to 4 of those shooting deaths that occurred in Cherokee County. There were 4 other victims that occurred in Fulton County. One of those victims was Yang Yu, age 63, and we are joined here at the Atlanta News Desk, Atlanta News First Digital Desk, by her son, Robert Peterson. And Robert, thanks so much for joining us. This is obviously bringing a number of very unpleasant memories back. Tell us why you have decided to participate in this documentary that's airing tonight.
Thank you again, Tim, for having me. I think it's important to share my story, to share what happened to my mother and 7 other victims. And so when I got together with Gina Kim and TT, the executive producers of the documentary, it was important to make sure that we showed that how this impacted not only my family, but the larger Asian American community as well.
Tell us about your recollections of that day. I've watched a clip of the documentary where you described the fact that you had heard about this and went literally searching for your mother, in your own words. Tell us about that day.
Right. So it happened in the afternoon and late at night, and I had been busy all day, so I had not caught up with the news. I think I heard about it on the way to bed. But at the same time, my brother, who was stationed in Japan serving the U.S. military, he heard about it, and he had been trying to contact our mother, and he had been texting her and had not been getting a response. And so I said, I'll check on her in the morning. And as the story developed, that's when I got more concerned because we had not heard from my mother. And then that's when I went searching for her, and I went to the places. I searched around looking for her vehicle, and then I came to her house and she wasn't here, but there was a note home. And but I found out eventually on my way home when I called the medical examiner's office, and they had identified my mother as one of the 8 victims.
What do you remember about the aftermath? Share some of your emotions when you found out that she was obviously not the only victim. There were seven other victims, all that occurred at 3 different metropolitan Atlanta spas. Tell us about your reactions after you learned of your mother's death.
Yeah, I think that's what the documentary really highlights, is that when I came to understand the full magnitude of what had happened, not only had my mother lost her life, and this person took away 7 other lives, but it was targeted. It was racially based and it was gender based, meaning that if it had not been for her being an Asian woman, this might not have happened, and that plays a large role in why this happened. And then to see the community's response of fear and of terror, but also of resiliency and community was what we needed at that time.
This obviously has also happened during one of the worst public health crises in the nation, the coronavirus. There was a lot of, bias or perceived bias regarding the Asian community at that time. Tell us how you feel that actually impacted this whole series of incidents.
Again, I always say I wish this upon no one, right? We didn't ask to be here, and we lost my mother in this way. But I think this galvanized the larger AAPI community and others, allies, because this was the culmination of what was happening to our communities that we were already speaking about, that we were already witnessing in the streets. And so as we allow that to happen and fester, it ultimately, again, I think peaked, right, in this tragedy that happened here in Atlanta. And I think that's why my mother's story, along with the other victims, resonates so much with not only the AAPI community, but the larger community as well.
Now, Robert Aaron Long is the suspect in these 4 Fulton County killings, shooting deaths, I should say. He has already pled guilty in Cherokee County to 23 charges. He's been sentenced to 4 life in prison without parole sentences. He has pled not guilty in regards to the deaths here in Fulton County, meaning that he will eventually, I imagine, go on trial soon, or eventually. Tell us, what was your reaction when you learned that he had pled not guilty to the 3 victims and your mother's here in Fulton County?
Well, again, I understand how the justice system works, so I expected that. And but what's different here in Fulton County is that the 4 women that he killed were of Asian descent, and they were all women. And so, what Fulton County and our families have decided was that we were going to pursue an enhancement of the death penalty and to label this as a hate crime. And so that's why this case is significantly different, and but tied to what happened also in Cherokee County. And so I felt when he pled not guilty, again, he's the only one that can be held accountable for this. But for me, what's more important, as the film highlights, is that I want us to realize that the reason why my mother and 7 other people are not here is because this man was able to obtain a weapon in one day and change the lives of 8 people, 6 of them being AAPI women. And without them being Asian women, this would not have happened.
There are a lot of media companies and film companies that seek to capitalize and dramatize, certain horrible tragedies, and we've seen countless times where families were reluctant or actually objected to those kind of film documentary treatments. What was it about this documentary and this film and these filmmakers' approach that led you to want to be involved in the project?
I think that notion is real, right? The hesitancy and the cautiousness of interacting with the media, especially at a trying time. But this was a very public and communal thing that happened to my family, and it impacted people beyond our families. And so it was very important for me to share in that pain, and as well as share in that resiliency. And so when I met TT and Gina, it was them, their personality, the staff, their vulnerability that really made me believe that they did want to tell our story. And it was important that Asian Americans got to tell this story so that we can not only share it with our communities and others, but that it entails the cultural sensitivity that we'll need. And so that's why I decided to work with this team, PBS, and I'm very thankful at the product that came out.
You've spoken several times about communicating or the other victims' families. Have you been in contact with any of the remaining victims' families over the past year and a half?
I have had some interactions with some of the other families.
And do you happen to know what their anticipation or reaction will be regarding the film's debut tonight?
That I'm not necessarily certain of. Again, I think it's re-traumatizing to witness it again, to hear the actual news broadcast, because again, I remember hearing about it, and then to make the connection that it was actually our mother as one of the victims. But again, it's important that we share that story with others so that they don't forget, why this happened. And we have to condemn this type of violence, this type of gun violence. And again, families were changed. I lost my mother. My niece and nephews lost their grandmother. The community lost a member. And more importantly, again, the larger community is living in fear. And so we can't allow that to happen. And so that's why this film is very important.
If you have one message to share with all the viewers regarding this case, regarding rising violence or allegations of rising violence against the Asian American and AAPI community, regarding this incident that happened on March 16th of last year, what would it be?
I would want them to see themselves reflected in my family and the families of others. Again, some of us lost a mother, a sister, a friend, a wife. And again, it was due to gun violence and race and gender based hate. And I don't want them to forget that. Again, my mother was a joy. She loved cooking, she loved food, she had family. She was probably like your mother. But my mother is not here because someone um, took her away from us in the most violent way. And so I really want to make sure that they understand that. And since this has happened, we've seen nothing but an increase in this violence against our community. So that's why it's important that we continue to fight and we continue to make noise and rise up against that level of hatred.
Robert Peterson, thank you for joining us here in Atlanta News First.
Thank you so much, Tim.
Thank you so much.